Yo, 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 how you doing? My name is Mark. We're going to do a panel that is not the panel you expected. So if you want to attend a panel on the psychology of security, sorry, I was just being a little paranoid about my security. And no, that's a security joke. This is not a panel on security. So if you want to attend a panel on security, I don't know what to tell you. This is a panel about user-centric ID. And actually, there's a wonderful story to talk about how Microsoft supports something called OpenID. So we're going to talk about that stuff. So apologies ahead of time if you want to talk about security, because we don't. Is there anybody here who want to talk about security? No. Okay. So we're not here to talk about security.
I don't want to, but I will talk about security.
We'll talk about the fishing hole.
So let's see. We got Kalia. Notice her font is a little
superscript
above the line. Scott, who by the way is no longer with Jan Raymond. That's just details. Me, my name is Mark. Yo, yo, yo. And by the way, I was the one who yelled out, "Yo, Joey, Brooklyn." Okay. And then Kim, who's known as the father of identity. He's the father figure here. And so, Kalia, do you have some slides you'd like to show us?
Yeah, I thought we could open up with some context, just so these folks know what we're going to talk about for the next hour.
Context. Let's get it in sync here.
So, like Mark said, we're talking about the user-centric paradigm here. And so instead of users getting their identity from all the different places that they go around the web, they're more in the center, and they can manage their identity and share it with different people and organizations. Sometimes this is called Identity 2.0, but...
now that would be as opposed to the vendors controlling their identity.
Right, the big co's in the middle.
Like Microsoft.
So just some context of who we are and where we're coming from. There's this group called the Identity Gang that started talking about user-centric identity about 3 years ago. And we had a mailing list, and we said, you know, this is a hard problem, but we can solve it. And we met up at the Internet Identity Workshop and started talking about these things. And Kim Cameron brought us the laws of identity. So this is the community context.
Clea, could you go back, please?
We can.
Would you like to describe what that logo is there? It's a very interesting logo.
Yeah, this is this is an allusion to the New Yorker cartoon from 1992. It says, "On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog."
It looks like a cat to me, though.
Well,
it's a dog.
Yeah, it's a dog.
So it's a dog posing as a human who's really behind a screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's this
Wearing
very cute cartoon where one dog is on the internet and he says to the other dog beside him on the internet, "Nobody knows you're a dog."
Right.
So, yeah.
Otherwise, more popularized by Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks in You've Got Mail.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. So the good news is that we succeeded in integrating the 4 different approaches to user-centric identity. OpenID, iNames, and LID all got together and said, we're going to share a service discovery protocol so you guys don't have to put 3 different boxes on your website to support single sign-on. We'll just have one. And then Skip joined the party, so all 4 different groups were together. And now that's all kind of come together and is now OpenID 2.0. So that's that part of the story. And these are some of the sites that are using OpenID to support single sign-on.
Excuse me. This is when I get to chastise Kalia.
Yes.
Because my company's logo is not on that chart. Now, I would usually take this personally. But since we are on a panel in public, I thought I would just be polite about it.
We'll upgrade the slides for next time.
I was just wondering, how come my company's been prejudiced?
Actually, I think technically I made that slide.
All right.
It's his fault.
Yeah.
Well, we have been supporting OpenID since day one, even though it gives us no end-user benefit, even though it costs me out of pocket, and there's no reason why I should have done it at all.
Let's get a round of applause.
Be a nice guy, okay? Just so I could stand up on a fucking panel and say I supported OpenID. And then I don't even get on the damn slide.
Okay.
Moving on.
So how does this work in practicality?
There you go.
Yeah.
On the wrong session, but that's just details.
Yeah. So this works. I'm a user, and I go to a WordPress blog. We call that a relying party, and I want to log in. So I give them my identifier. Mine personally happens to be an iname equals Kalia, and it looks at that and it says, oh, we're going to send her to her identity broker, her OpenID provider, and we're going to ask her for her username and password. And I'm going to tell it what it is, and it's going to go back to that site and say, yeah, the person who controls that identifier is that person. Let them log in. Make a comment on your blog. And so we've succeeded in doing this third-party authentication. So I go to Wiki Travel. I want to log in. It checks with my OpenID provider. It may not even go and ask me to give a username and password again. It knows I've already logged in, and it lets me go back. So this is pretty powerful because we have the web, and now we have an identity layer on top of it. And it itself is not really where folks make money. In fact, we could get to this topic of where you make money, but it's not on this really thin layer of just authentication. So we have Microsoft Card Space, and do you want to say a few words about what that is, Kim?
Well, I think probably a lot of people, how many of the people in the room have actually seen the card space presentation that just came before?
There was a panel right before this.
Right, okay. So basically, if you just go back to the previous slide for a minute. Yeah.
Render.
So first of all, this pattern is part of a pattern that you see for a lot of different ways of doing identity. You see it in corporate environments. You see it with SAML. You see it with WS Federation. It's all really the same pattern in different parts of your life. What's really interesting about OpenID is that it's not a cryptographic protocol. It basically gives you a DNS URL. It attaches your identity to a DNS URL. And it's as strong and as weak as DNS. So you can think of it as something which is really easy to put in place, really easy to get moving, and every website can get there fast. But it isn't a cryptographic protocol the way, say, the type of protocols that you use in banking and so on. So I guess the other thing is that in that redirection that you see there's a very big opportunity to be phished because it's the relying party.
There.
Yeah, it's the relying party that sends you to the place where you put in your credentials. So if you have an evil relying party, it can send you to an evil site to put in your credentials. So what CardSpace brings to the table is to bring systems like OpenID, SAML, WS Federation into a common paradigm where you have visual symbols and the user always gets the same experience, and that redirection between the relying party and the OpenID provider, for example, is no longer necessary. The visual representation knows where that identity provider is located, and you're going to go to the right identity provider, and your credentials can't get scraped and that kind of stuff.
So you can use CardSpace to log into your
So we see it as a way of having a spectrum of different identity solutions, which you need, to live in modern society, all that behave in the same way. And so building that into the operating system, and other people are building it into their operating systems. It's not just a Microsoft technology, it's being built. They showed demos earlier of this stuff running on Linux and Macintosh.
So there was exciting news, too, about Microsoft and OpenID getting along. So, Scott, do you want to talk a bit about what that agreement is about?
Yeah, OpenID actually acquired Microsoft. No.
And
what we
felt
did
good.
is the two technologies actually complement each other really nicely. OpenID is, as Kim was saying, not a cryptographic protocol, and you need that means of authenticating yourself in such a way that users can't get phished. And And then OpenID is really great at your public persona, things that you want to make public and are tied to this URL. And so the two working together are fantastic. So in February at the RSA conference, Bill Gates got up on stage and announced that we're all going to work together, and it's a big happy kumbaya, and we're moving forward with it.
Cool. And so some of you probably work in an enterprise context. So this is like the meta kumbaya slide, which shows CardSpace, OpenID, and the Liberty SAML protocols working together. So if you're inside an enterprise and you're using SAML to do enterprise authentication, you could use CardSpace as part of that login, and you could even issue within the enterprise OpenIDs to your employees as part of your provisioning process, potentially as well. So we've worked really hard as a community to figure out where these things intersect and how they work together.
Well, you could even imagine you have a CardSpace card that represents your employer, say, and then you go to a website which takes OpenID, and that the same card that you use and that does cryptographic protocols inside the enterprise would do OpenID protocols when you go to this website. And so you can now go to the whole spectrum of websites, and instead of just being held prisoner inside your silo of the enterprise or whatever it is, because the whole thing comes down to getting rid of all of these silos, these identity silos that keep the world from becoming user-centered. From the user's point of view, they belong in all of these places. From the silo's point of view, they are very controlling. And so what we need to do, the whole, I think what all of us are working on is breaking down those silos.
Yep. So, Scott, do you want to talk about these?
Sure, absolutely. So, when I did this slide, actually, or these set of slides, it was about, specifically around OpenID, but I think identity as a whole fits this. One of the key aspects of an OpenID is that it's a URL, it's a DNS name. And that's important. So in my case, it's scott.kavitan.com or kavitan.myopenid.com. And that destination on the internet actually becomes an interesting piece of real estate. And then when you couple that with a lot of the technologies that are out there and emerging standards, things like microformats, iCal, FOAF, et cetera, you can start to think about some of the ramifications of having this identity layer at the root of this thing. Go back to that other one, would you? When you think about social networking, if I have a unique identity for all the different sites that I go to on the internet, and then I have lists of friends or family or coworkers that are also based on that same OpenID, then hey, this is really powerful. I could now create a social network once and for all that I could then drag with me from site to site to site. And so instead of having to have all your friends join this silo, hey, they just come along with you, and maybe you assign permission for them to see your photos or your videos or whatever.
Not only join the silo, but then to be able to find them in the silo.
Right, exactly.
What is their name in that silo, and how does that relate to this other?
Right.
Yeah.
Think about contact information, and when you talk about HCard, being able to display contact information to users, especially based on the social network. So I get a view of someone's contact information that's based on who I am. So if I'm really good friends with this person, maybe I get their cell phone or their home phone, whereas if I'm not, then I just get maybe the direct office line, that kind of stuff. And then just think about calendaring. How awful is calendaring? I mean, no offense to Microsoft, I use Exchange too, but it'd be great if I could land an iCal file or some kind of free busy information at this destination that is mine, and again, present it to these users in such a way that is really valuable to them. So very exciting stuff.
So once again, it's removing another silo.
Exactly, exactly. And then same thing for reputation and trust. I'm going to be able to build up a context about who I am that's tied to this OpenID that I can then drag with me to every single site. Today, I can't go onto some other site like Yahoo and then point over at eBay and say, hey, I'm that guy on eBay. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. But OpenID is actually going to empower you to be able to do that, not necessarily pull in your existing content from eBay, because eBay will probably be the last one to support OpenID.
I like to think of it as the freedom to aggregate yourself. Today, or until very recently, you had to be a different identity at all the websites you were at. And now you have the freedom to be the same person across many of them. And I don't think any of us really see a world in which everybody has one identity. It's more like I would have a manageable number under 10, say, that I would use in different contexts and for different reasons, but it wouldn't be, pushing 100 or more, as some people have today with the number of websites that they're logging into.
And that's partly the card space paradigm is, okay, so you still have this certain number of identities, but even those are not random. You sort of have them available in a wallet, and you can use them whenever it makes sense.
Well, I think that giving context for users is actually going to be huge, because if I can go to another site and then point over somewhere else and say, hey, I've made 300 edits to a wiki over here, and this is my blog, and here I can prove it with this identity. Now when I show up at another new community or another new site, I can pull those along with me, and people go, oh, yeah, this person has a valid contribution to make to the conversation that's happening.
So a lot of, one of the issues that happens with all this identity stuff is it brings up a lot of issues. And so we have a very loose, informal community that is supporting dialogue about all these issues. There's 15 working groups and several more in formation dealing with different social, technical, and legal aspects of what it means to have an identity layer. So that's what Identity Commons is really supporting. And this, I had to do this slide because we've talked about it for a while. It's the Big Bang. This is what's going to happen when we get this identity layer.
It's all in the animation.
It's something that Kim and several of us have talked about for a while, that there's enormous potential and value. Yes? Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, that's part of the Big Bang.
Yeah, stop moving.
Oh, this one. Okay, I'll attach it to that one. And thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. And so, anyways, this is the end of the slideshow. Those are all of our blogs. And the Internet Identity Workshop is where those of us who are inordinately obsessed with this issue hang out and deal with the next steps. So now...
And there's one coming up in May, right?
Yeah, it's on there. So now we're back to the panel, now that we have some shared context.
All right. What is identity anyway? Where we're at today is Passport 2.0. What we have is single sign-on. And all these idealistic things that we just talked about are not here yet. And in fact, even the OpenID 2 era hasn't, is it officially begun, Scott, or not?
There's been quite a bit of conversation on the mailing list today about that. So
Yeah, I would say that probably as of this moment, since the code isn't in my code, it's not here yet. So let's just try to, for those coders, business people, and designers who care about these details, we'll kind of map out to you where we're at right now. So we have single sign-on. So if you come into this universe, you can sign on in one world and sign on in the other world, and then you're signed in. And that, to me, is not an end-user benefit, and is not anything why anybody would want to spend money on, and not what anyone would really should care about. It is an important building block, and I will tell a story to back that up. So back in 2003, I was obsessed about a format called FOF. And we facilitated two social networks, Tribe and eCademy, to move these social network data structures back and forth. So when you went from eCademy to Tribe, you could bring with you your list of your friends and your photos and your links and your blog posts, etc. The problem was that I didn't understand security and the psychology of security and single sign-on.
Especially the psychology.
And so anyone could be Mark Cantor and assume my role, right? And so that's not very cool. So the whole thing kind of blew up. And it was right at that moment I met Dick Hart and heard about Brad Fitzpatrick. And so it's a classic marketing story, though I would still argue today that the Skip platform had more functionality and was better funded, et cetera, et cetera. OpenID won, if for no other reason, because they had a really cool name. Right? So OpenID, though even today the author still thinks that single sign-on is enough, clearly, to me at least, and maybe the people on this panel agree, that that is just a building block. It's a completely important foundation layer to attain single sign-on in a secure environment.
I mean, let's not say it's single. Yeah, well,
Go.
Would you like to go first?
No, go ahead. You
Go.
You have.
I'll kick him after. Okay, no, no. I think it's a matter of having a handle that I can put on someone, and that stays constant.
Persistent handle.
Yeah, between different sites. That's one thing. So I think even that, without any attribute exchange, is a really important thing. Okay. The second thing is, right now, and I don't know how other people feel about this, but when I go to a new website, and I can look at this website and go, this is a really cool place here, and I'm starting to get attracted by the website, and then I get to the page, sign in, and I back off. I mean, I run for the hills. How many people run when you see make up a new password and sign in? Right. Just let me ask.
Well, let me ask you this.
Now,
Hold on.
Yeah.
How many people use the same password? All right, thank you.
And you do that on any site
Every
that you
time.
go to?
How are you going to remember the damn password?
How many people do that on every site they go to? Excellent.
Actually, a lot of people have two passwords. They have their one password they use a lot, and then their really secure password.
No, but in our studies, okay, when we were studying this, we said, okay, all you do is you get a site that they come to regularly, right? You take away, all of a sudden you make it not work. And they'll give you their other secure password. So it's very convenient. You can get they'll think, oh, I used the secure password at this site. Anyway, the point is that for a lot of people, this process of sort of going further into the site is just that big hassle, and then filling out all of these forms, and I just don't want to get involved with this. I'm going to go back to some place that I already have a relationship with. So I think that it's a real big enabler of sort of the smaller sites, the sites that are trying to acquire business, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that rarely does the best technology win, right? I mean, OpenID is a very dumb technology. And I'll be the first one to admit it, but it's very simple.
That's why we supported it.
Right. No, it's very simple. And there's two use cases that are why it's taking off. And the one is from the user perspective. Users would love to have one username, one password. They'd love to get to that. They know we're not there yet, but gosh, we're on the path. And yeah, it's got this OpenID name, so it's open. That's great. And it is open. That's fantastic. The other one is the site side, which is what you mentioned. User shows up at the site, user goes to engage, user hits registration screen, user goes away. If I can just show up, enter my identity, and I'm off and running, that's fantastic. So sites out in the long tail, and I swear we won't say long tail ever again in this panel, but are adopting this technology at a fantastic rate.
You don't mind if I disagree, right?
Well, the statistics
it's your
prove
The
it.
marquee de counter.
Like Magnolia has 50. Magnolia has 15% of new users signing up with OpenID.
I don't care. Those are echo chamber nutcases. I don't care.
Who's that?
I don't care about a million people who follow Evan Williams. I so don't care.
That's
right?
not.
I'm sorry. You go out in the hallway. You go down to you go out to the Grand Canal. Okay? Go stop one of these people. Go out into the strip. Ask any of those people, do they care about a persistent handle? Do they care about single sign-on? Do they care? I'm sorry, they don't. That is not an end-user benefit. That is not why people use computers. That is an insular, inside the beltway, inside the echo chamber, little kind of regurgitative bullshit.
No.
That has nothing to do with real people. And that is not going to win.
Real people can actually
win.
appreciate things that they don't even talk about.
Okay, I'm just trying to tell you.
The ideal,
on the top 10, and then you got the top 100, and you'd be at the top 1,000, and you still wouldn't find persistent handle on their list of things they care about. Voting for American Idol, maybe, using their credit card at the gas pump. Remembering which rent-a-car I did so I don't have to, or when I go to the hospital, every fucking time they ask me, what's your birthday, what's your birthday, what's your birthday, as if they don't remember what my birthday is, right? So there are clearly things that will create, when the Big Bang happens, that'll make our lives better. And I'm not saying we don't need that layer of authentication, but let's get on with it. Let's not think that a single sign-on is the end user. That's step one.
I don't think
That's
we said it was the
that's
end.
The baby
we
step.
just said that it was worth
Well,
something
look,
in
if
and
I
of
can
itself.
listen to Ray Ozzie talk about waxing eloquently about the future, let's talk about the future here. I mean, you know, it's not the end. It's
We're
the
all
beginning.
about the future, man.
All right, it's just the beginning.
Listen,
Well,
I can't
To say
even
it's
leave a
enough-
comment on your blog because when I get there, you know, you want a password, right?
Okay, dude, I'm
And
just trying to
and
say.
I don't want to do it, so I send you an email.
You don't.
And I say,
You don't
hey.
need a password. Okay, but I'm just trying to say. I disagree with Brad Fitzpatrick thinking that it is enough. It is not enough. It is about end user
We
benefit.
all agree with that,
Unless
right?
we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
give
yeah.
benefits to end
Absolutely.
users,
We
it
agree,
doesn't.
Mark.
So
Everybody
Mark,
agree here?
all we're
Okay.
talking about is
We
saying
agree.
that the technology had to take hold somehow, and it needed to start.
And for a
simple.
guy who got
If we
burned
tried
on
to
FOFNet,
bake-
I
if we tried to
appreciate-
bake the whole stack, we would fail
Beautiful.
miserably.
I love
if
it.
we look at
Let's
history,
get back
there's a
to
bunch of
May
folks who've done this before.
2007. Okay,
Yeah.
so we got.
We've got a
Dude,
and
what's
Oh,
up?
question.
some adult supervision has arrived.
So Microsoft released Passport some time ago, and now it's pretty well gone.
No, it's live now.
Bye.
It's live now.
Now you have
So-
to. It's
so
funny.
how-
Let me just tell you. I'll just interrupt you for 1 second. You know, I go over and I talk to the Windows Live guys. You know, and I say, well, you know, we got this really cool ideas, you know, for this new authentication technology, and then they go, well, how many authentications do you do every day? And I go, well, you know, quite a few, really, quite a large number. And they'll go, well, we do 1 billion. So, you know, Passport hasn't gone away. It's migrated. It's sort of morphed into something which serves Microsoft's properties, and it's really said, okay, we can do that well, and people accept it for that. We'll hone it for that. So it's gone away as this generalized idea, but it's still it is still, you know, a really amazing example of sort of binding a bunch of properties together, which is basically what a lot of these other technologies do too.
So what's your question?
So I mean, the question is, why can't some of that Passport data store become an identity provider for some of these more open identity sources?
It
So
probably
people
will
still
be.
can.
That's what we are trying to facilitate. That's one of the things.
Look at AOL, right? Every AOL user, every AIM user has an open ID, right? They've taken that existing silo and opened it up. Great. I bet some of the bigger providers will do that as well, and that's going to be fantastic.
If you look at what's happening with, we just released a new toolkit, right, and a new capability by which people who have their own websites and so on can take advantage of our authentication, similar to, you know, Yahoo's BBauth and all that kind of stuff.
Can I say
My hope is that sort of thing would migrate into something which is more aligned with this standard, such that, you know, all kinds of long tail sites, they wouldn't have to do anything sort of special for us in order to benefit from it. But that's something. It's complicated to do those things because, you know, well, there's intellectual property stuff, and then there's security stuff, and does this meet the minimum bar stuff, and so, you know, it's going to take a while, but that's certainly what I know a number of us inside Microsoft hope.
So can I ask you to finish your question? Because I want to get at the full reason what you were behind. What were you really trying to say?
Did I cut him off?
Well, I mean, what I really want to say is that you guys have got the data source. It's a bit rich to sort of sit up there as Microsoft saying, you know, we really support this open identity and so forth. When you're sitting on the data source, you could be an identity provider tomorrow. You could be doing 1 billion auths through an open auth provider tomorrow. And I hope that when we get back here next year and sit in the same session like I did last year, that you guys will be fronting up and telling us how wonderful it is exposing that Passport data source out through open.
Okay, so I got an answer
That's
for
a
you.
good point.
I got an answer for you. See? And now with this answer, you'll understand why none of us, at least the 3 of us, support Passport. Because Microsoft controls Passport. And for Microsoft to take Passport to tie it into the rest of the web, in other words, the people that aren't Microsoft, that actually is a Microsoft decision. And I don't relish this guy's life who's got to go back and try to convince them of that. But that's his job. All right? Now, you're absolutely right. 1 billion sign-on a day, lots of data there, okay? So I tried to ask Ray the question. They didn't even give me a window to ask him the question, which is, you got this thing called live contacts. What are you, Ray, going to do about opening up your captured customers to the rest of the world? Just because Kim gets to support OpenID does not mean that Passport does.
Well, and let's, okay, well, first of all, we have to look
That's
at
the
all
challenge
of
in front of us.
We have
But
to
that's
look at
not
all-
us.
We have
That's-
to look at all the players, okay? Because, I mean, you can go and you can look at Google, you can look at Yahoo and everybody. And I think what you're seeing at this point in time is people are opening up in the outbound direction. So, you know, you can use a Yahoo or Google or Windows or, you know, Windows Live ID at other third-party sites. Now, when are identities that come from outside going to be accepted inside Google,
AOL's
Yahoo, and so
AOL's
on?
doing it.
AOL is starting to do it.
Right.
And,
But
you know, and
BB
I
Auth
think
is
that's-
not that.
Yeah.
That's not what BB Auth does.
But
So
all
Yahoo
I'm
hasn't
saying
done
is that that's a really different business decision. And then the question of, okay, the people who run the individual properties, opening up their data or whatever, that's another business decision too. And so what I think you're going to see, I'm just pointing out that there are different business decisions probably made by different people in the organizations, and they're all going to be going at different rates.
Well, and let's get some perspective here. OpenID has really only been around for about 2 years, and it's had a pretty significant impact on the marketplace already. Now, when you look at how big businesses have to think about how they're, how does this impact IP? Oh crap, we got to bring in a bunch of lawyers. That's going to slow things down. But the best part about OpenID is it's inevitable and it's unstoppable. There won't be some other solution that comes along from one of the big providers by themselves to do this. And the big providers themselves probably couldn't get together and say, hey, we're going to create provider ID. Just wouldn't fly.
Yeah, so we've overcome probably the basic technical problem. So now we have what we could call an interoperable architecture layer that's emerging, in various ways. OpenID is great in that regard.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that all of the business issues have been worked out. It's a whole new paradigm to go into a world where, you're figuring out how to make alliances and do this. You know what I'm saying? Open up outside.
But does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it just seems that Microsoft has retrenched from where they were back in the good old days of Passport of trying to make it a reasonably
Dude,
open approach.
dude, you won't be hearing about Google supporting OpenID.
It's interesting that
They
you
are a
would
lot
say that
further along.
because it's interesting that you have that perspective because a lot of us really were offended by Passport because it made Microsoft the center of the universe, as opposed to distributing the center to wherever you choose it to be. And that's really what OpenID is about. And if those big providers open up, I could choose to have AOL or Microsoft or Google in a theoretical future where they open up. Or I could put it on the server in my basement or with my friend Joe down the street. And that's what's really different about this architecture.
And that's a lot better than if you went to Google Po or Yahoo Po or whatever, and they wouldn't be talking about this, right? So
Does that make sense that the architecture
kudos to
it allows a
Microsoft
lot
at
more
least.
different options?
All right, now next guy.
I'm just wondering if two different topics are potentially being confused here, because one topic is the concept that I have an identity and I may want to be able to define that on my own machine, for example, and then use that at different websites, including Microsoft or whatever. Wonderful issue. Separate issue is I have data someplace, and maybe that data is on my machine, maybe that data is hosted at someone like, a Microsoft or a Yahoo or whatever, and I want to share that data. In the conversation I've heard to now, I keep hearing those things being mentioned in the same sentence, and yet, to me, those seem like two actually largely unrelated issues.
I totally agree with you that they are separate issues, and what happens is they are connected, though.
Yeah, you can't have one without
And
the
so, and a lot of people just, they conflate them completely. So I think it's great to point out that it's not the same thing. But especially the business decisions involved in just having a common architecture are different from the business decisions involved in how you use that architecture.
Yeah.
But the OpenID architecture, as I understand it, is really mostly focused on that question of, as was being berated by Mark earlier, on sort of single sign-on and having a portable identity.
So far.
So far.
I wasn't allowed to finish. We're halfway through the pitch.
We cut him
and by the way, I'm going to use you to ramp, tangential for a second. Okay, now, I'm going to take a poll of the panelists. So, Kim, you agree that they are intertwined, but they should be separate?
What?
The user-centric I am me versus sharing the data. They're interconnected, but they should be separate.
Well, you can, it depends. Okay, now it takes you into what is identity data.
No, we don't want to go there. But okay, quick answer. Yes or no? Connected or not, separate or not, they should be, they shouldn't be.
Well, I think...
Kim's answer.
Well, I think, yeah, access to the data that you have on a site is separate from being able to use your identity.
Should be separate.
Sites.
Okay, Scott, what do you think? Separate or together? Same issue or different issues?
I actually think they're the same, quite honestly.
Okay, Kalia.
Well, I think they're separate because I think I should have, on sites that I have data, I should not have to give away my username and password for someone to access my data. I should have a little key, like my API, that I would give to sites that I would want to access data. Yeah, right. And that I would know who came and who got what data, and then I could turn it on and off for those,
okay,
like a little doorway.
Because I got a third one.
Now we're not talking about
I got a third one. You ready for this?
No, but we're talking about the normative of, like right now, today, if I want to go and say LinkedIn, go to Google and get my contacts, I have to give them my username and password. That's not cool.
Okay, but there should be this behind the curtains thing where you're unlocking the keys and you're setting access, and once all your access is set up, it should just go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, I got a third one. Here we go. And this is always throws me for a Louis, right? When people get into this identity and the reputation thing, and it's about credit cards and making money, and should I trust you, and am I going to buy something from you, and what about, you lent me money, and I don't trust you, and all that shit. And most people, a lot of people completely intertwine this shit with your identity. And to me, it's like, whoa, it's like this completely other thing that I so don't care about, and I trust other people to worry about. Right? And so I'm just figuring if I support the basic authentication stuff, and me, I'm off in my little tangent going this way, that there's all these other people going to worry about that shit going the other way, credit cards and all that crap. I mean, so isn't there really a bunch of dimensions here we're talking about here? It's all kind of intertwined and,
Yeah, and I totally agree. And one of the interesting things is, okay, the way that we, at Microsoft, and I think a lot of people in the industry think of identity, digital identity, and we've been through eons of horrifyingly boring discussions about it. What is identity? And we come to the conclusion that we can all agree on one thing, that a digital identity is a set of claims made by one party about another party. So for example, in the OpenID stuff, there's right now the very basic thing is the claim that you own a URL, and it's made by DNS. And it could be made by an operator like an OpenID operator, such as Jan Rain does, and so on. And you can go and you can look at all of the other security protocols, and they all work the same way. But then you could say, well, gee, what else could I make into a claim? I could make these very interesting claims like this person is over 21. In other words, it's no longer this person was born in 1984. It's they're over 21. So you're starting to get more intellect in the claim. And then you can imagine going to this person can access Mark's website and leave a message. It doesn't even say who you are. It just says you've got an access. In other words, you can imagine claims that just express authorization ideas. And so that's why when you say, well, what is the identity? I just see it as the ability to make the claim. In the card space, the picture is associated with the ability to make some claim. And we purposely say, well, we don't want to put any restrictions on what a claim would be, right? The claim might be, you really are dating a woman who's not married and is under 60, so the claim can
I thought he was going to say 16. But
I was too, but then I realized that I shouldn't do that.
Okay, but you can see that you could spend umpteenth time talking about, and you would still never get to the OpenID 2, which is where we're going.
Well, no, you know,
that's the
OpenID
question
2 is
now.
basically, I think that we shouldn't, it isn't as far away as you say, but on the other hand, OpenID 2 doesn't deal with the attribute exchange problems.
Yes, it does. All right, so interrupt. Mike, sorry, give me 1 second, okay? Interrupt. So as I was trying to say, resync as of May 2007, okay? So here's the guy who's authoring, hopefully, a lot of these libraries that my company's going to use to have the attribute exchange, okay? So what the attribute exchange does is it creates that second layer on top of the authentication that then finally brings us the ability to import and export between these two worlds. This is a function that Skip Networks had day one. It's why I was supporting Skip Networks. And Skip has more or less folded that into the OpenID community. As I understand it, Skip will do the Perl and Java libraries, and Jan Rain will do the PHP and what else?
Python, Ruby.
Okay, and who's doing the ASP.NET libraries?
So we actually
Kim?
had an ASP.NET library we were doing, and then I actually met with Scott Hanselman. Anyways. And
So
he,
Microsoft's going to do them?
So no, somebody's doing them.
Okay.
There's a great new library out there that's fantastic.
Okay, so again, resync. My guy Martin, outside of Nuremberg, is waiting for the code so we can plug it into our thing, so we can officially give birth to the OpenID, the era of OpenID 2.
So, really quick about attribute exchange, I think the key about it, just to give you the basics, it's name value pairs that you can associate with an identity and then take it with you from site to site to site. So, hey, that can be easy things like, my first name, my last name, my email address. But, what if I landed on United.com and I'm booking a flight on a 737? It can go check your identity provider and say, oh, when you land on a when you're flying on a 737, you like seat 14E because that's an exit row. So being able to associate arbitrary data with users is the next step of where we're going with this stuff.
And
I think the key is going to be not just having one way to represent this data. So we may be able to do this with attribute exchange, but it's going to be baked out in micro formats and all kinds of other ways that this data.
But not all that stuff is baked in into 2.0.
Right.
Ideally, OpenID 2 would be data format agnostic, so if you choose to use FOF or XFN or whatever the fuck schema you want to use, it shouldn't matter. The open attribute would give you the foundation layer to be able to selectively decide which of the attributes I have that I want to share. Exactly what Khalil was talking about, okay? Now that's ideally how I understand it, okay?
Right.
Now then the next effort, once we had this attribute exchange, would be to, God forbid, I'll use the term, standardize schemas. I do apologize for using that term because it's a horrible term.
There's an identity schemas working group at Identity Commons working to harmonize
absolutely
schemas.
convinced.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff is done in the card space thing and across platforms. I mean, it's,
Right.
Higgins, Novell, all that kind of stuff.
And there's the 100 top profile fields, and then there's the over there. So anyway,
Well,
so
they're all reused fields. We've had 200 schemas.
Right.
How many
So-
times are we going to reinvent?
Exactly.
schemas?
Well,
So-
that's what's going
but
to
just so-
determine how attribute exchange does. Is
Okay, so-
what's going to happen with the schema?
So let's assume that there's a lot to be worked out, okay? But if I got my photos and my friends in my groups in Facebook, and I'm registering into MySpace or whatever the hell, I want to be able to take it with me, and I want to move it over here.
But in this world, there is no Facebook or MySpace. Social networking is a feature of every site that you have, right?
You have the
Dude, you don't have to tell
social
me that.
network.
Right.
Except, do not tell Mark Zuckerberg that there's no such thing called Facebook.
Well,
and
he'll
do
just-
not
he'll
tell
go,
Rupert
"Oh, you're
Murdoch that there's
crazy,
no such
you're
thing called
bonkers."
Facebook.
That's
Because the opposite end of the spectrum is that a lot of money and people are locked in to a lot of these places, okay? And this is the realities of the world. And that you can take out onto the strip, and you can ask anybody about MySpace or Facebook, and they will know what the hell you're talking about.
Sure.
So that's
I
where we're
agree.
at today.
But the
So-
key to what you just said there was they're locked in, right? Users don't like
That's
that.
what I'm talking
even
about.
the MySpace, the users out on the street
Right.
know that MySpace
So
is
what
doing
the
bad
attributes
things.
should exchange, and what we need to complete, and we need the women like Lori to worry about this, is that one person's event is another person's concert, right? Or whatever the hell. Create little proxy things to map first name to surname or whatever, okay? But the idea is that humans are empowered so they can move their shit from here to there, okay? That's what we need to be able
Well,
to do.
actually, we've been doing a lot of
I
work
think
on this
Mike
thing
wants to
called.
ask that question.
Hey, Mike,
no,
you're
well, wait a minute. We've been doing this stuff on
gonna
mapping.
interrupt you.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of people who spend their days from morning to night on building these claims transformers that map from one schema to another schema, and that all fits into the overall
And that's the
meta-system
technology
idea.
that Microsoft would license us and charge a lot of money for, right?
I don't think that
Okay, good.
we would license it.
That was my
The
business
notion,
model joke.
the notion of claims side
Okay.
transformer.
All
we
right,
wouldn't
Mike
license.
Jones, who by the way works with Kim, so just to disclaim things.
So I'm actually reacting to, ooh, loud. I'm actually reacting to your question that you sent down the row, which was, is identity and sharing data the same or different? And I'd postulate that identity is enabling for the data exchange. And indeed, Kim's refinement, I think, is right on, that having the ability to have abstract claims, privacy-preserving claims, such as I'm over 21 versus I was born on March 22nd, 1960, is the right way to go. But then, you know, at your site or Kalia's site, you can decide who makes claims that you're willing to accept to do whatever you want. So it's foundational. It's what we got to build for.
Right. And in fact, what happened was there was a system called Rise. And Jonathan Abrams has admitted that he stole from Rise. So Rise then begat Friendster, which begat MySpace, which begat Facebook. Okay? And so what's happened is that people understand now the power of the identity. So you can go out onto the strip and talk to the cab drivers and waitresses here in Vegas, and they will understand that power of having their own page. And for those of us who wonder, why would someone expose so much of this stuff in the public? It's your own 15 minutes, but it's persistent. And you're there all the time, and you are that person on MySpace, and you've got that whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, and besides, I just can't believe, I can't believe that it's just like, we have bars, and some bars are hip bars, and people go to those bars because they want to be seen there, and then 6 months later, they don't go there anymore, they're at another bar, et cetera. You know, and so I think these things like Facebook and so on, I have kids who are Facebook fanatics and so on. Those are very trendy things. They're in one for a few months and then they move off to another
The
one.
difference is you can't get rid of it. You don't allow you to shut down your account, right? So
But you know what? They don't really
that old
care too
persona
much,
is
I
still
don't
over
think.
there. It's left there, and
No, it's true. Yeah.
the ghost. And it used to be one of the first things that Cory Doctorow would ever do in the early days of social networking. He'd go in and immediately want to turn off his account. And if the account wouldn't let you turn it off, then he would completely lambast it, which of course he meant he lambasted every single system. So you won't see Cory Doctorow in any of these systems. But that was one of the first things we did in our system, was to make you get rid of your account.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
All right?
I wish I could do that with Vonage. If anybody knows how, let me know.
Okay, but to restate, right? So the idea was that single sign-on is great, but it's a foundation layer. And we are sitting in the presence of one of the guys who's enabling this OpenID 2, all right? And to me, and a guy in my world, that's really important. I want to make sure that OpenID 2 happens, because then I can get on with delivering end user benefits. Let me just tell you a story. So I'm pitching this guy. It's a British college student website, and he wants to create a network for every college or university in the UK. Okay? Let me tell you what his face looked like when I told him I could import Facebook accounts. Oh my God, he was like, "Rah! Are you kidding? 98% of my potential customers on Facebook, that's amazing." I mean, it was a complete deal closer, right? And so my own little pet peeve is that though Facebook has open APIs, and you can access them, and they're using those open APIs against MySpace as a competitive thing, if you bother to read their terms of service, it says specifically, you cannot use this Facebook information and show it to anybody else but other Facebook members. Now I'm thinking, well, damn, how come the end user's data is now called Facebook information? And how dare they tell me what to do with that information, when clearly if my user wants to share their information with anybody they want, they should be able to. So I am here to publicly ask, let's see, I'll ask Kim Cameron. Hey, Kim, would you get Microsoft lawyers to sue Facebook, class action lawsuit? I'll go on there, I'm a member of Facebook. That's illegal. They cannot do that shit. We need some lawyer money.
They can.
Why?
They can, yeah.
As long as it's in their terms of use on the main site.
Exactly.
It's perfectly legal. It may not be nice, it may not be friendly, you may not like it, but it is legal.
Okay, so what you're saying is they'll lose the lawsuit,
Well, whoever sues.
but it'll be great PR. And Microsoft can afford it. That's what I'm talking about. I can't afford it.
We don't have enough lawsuits going on, so I think
No, but
it's
see,
a really
but here's the
good
argument.
idea.
Here's the argument. Microsoft's got a lot of bad PR. Okay, let me just call it negative vibes. Okay, I mean you are a convicted monopolist twice. Okay, let's just say you need some good juju. You need some positive vibrations. You know, you need to be singing Bob
You're
Marley
the
a lot.
liberator of
No. Suing Mark Zuckerberg over this terms of service would be a great
Liberator of
benefit.
It's a very interesting idea,
everybody.
Mark, and I'll definitely pass it on.
You won't lose this lawsuit. You won't win the lawsuit, but you'll
you know,
be really cool.
I will say that I have spent a lot of time talking to the MSN guys about what is Microsoft's position on this. And so we have a really strong position that the user owns his data. Now, what we do with that, you know, I mean, whether there are places where we don't actually practice that or not, I don't know. But that is our position.
So let's be clear. So in live spaces, I should have APIs to get at my blog posts, my photos, my list of friends, my groups, right? Live contacts.
Blogs are already there. Contacts are there. What else do you need?
Okay.
60 days for
Hold on,
photos.
here's the thing. In both directions. Because API
both
should be a
directions.
two-way street. Read and write. That's what I'm talking about.
I think you know, we've really heard some of that
Give me a
stuff.
second.
Yeah.
No, and I just want to say one more thing, okay? Because I haven't even mentioned the name of my product, People Aggregator, okay? And in the platform, we have import-export of different files. And though I have gone to many a Kalia Kumbaya session, and there's no way in hell I would ever go to this Gab Fest. I love these people. I wish them best of luck.
Do you know that last week
You're on
that
the
Liberty
blacklist.
Alliance, no, Mark,
Whatever.
Mark, progress was made in leaps and bounds.
I'm just trying to say something.
No, listen.
All right. Progress is being made.
Yeah, Liberty Alliance and OpenID took steps to get WS Federation and OpenID
Right
to
on,
work.
right
Like,
on.
that was last week.
I
And
am
in 2
totally
weeks
in
we
favor
get
of that.
to do
I
like,
vote
the
for it.
next steps
Okay.
for all this
Well,
stuff
I
working
think
trying to
together.
say
Kalia is right that it is good for people to talk to each other, but you don't have to come.
I don't have to come, thank
You
God.
could
And you know what? He's
let me tell you
being
why.
ingenuous because
And let me
he
tell you
actually
why.
has come and encouraged people to get something done.
Okay, and so let me tell you why. Because I had an epiphany last summer in Vancouver, and I'm sitting there in this room, filled, by the way, with people who all had constituents and issues about this issue. And I tried to add up in my head, what happens if every single person in that room was supporting OpenID and their full 100% of their membership was using it and they're all single sign on. And I quickly calculated we're somewhere between 2 and 3% of the entire populace of the internet. It was at that point I went home with a cold bowl of water on my head and I went, damn, well I better make sure to support these proprietary formats as well. So what you'll see in my product is both a support and enthusiastic support for the open standards, but we support MySpace, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Flickr. Thank you very much. Because at the end of the day, it's about end user benefits.
Well, you could even be a gateway between the closed areas
That's
and the
what I'm
open
talking
areas.
about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. So we will be supporting MS Live Spaces.
I like that.
Thank you very much. Next guy, dude, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hit me.
You guys mentioned like gas station credit card stuff. It's kind of like, you could almost think of it as a single sign-in because you can get a quick transaction in and out. But you also have the problem of other people using their credit cards at the pump, getting that same quick transaction in and out. So you get a lot of fraud on top of it. Ultimately, merchants are responsible for paying back a lot of fraud. Where do you guys think with the single sign-on ID layer that the responsibility lies in terms of security breaches and fraud?
Okay,
Too fast?
Like a
he must
security
have,
question to
he
me.
actually read the session title.
But I was just wondering.
Okay, well, first of all, the problem with credit cards is that they use a shared secret, which is the credit card number. And it's supposed to be a secret, right? It's a secret, but the secret goes to everybody in the world. Like, I think there are something like 15,000 people who have my secret. So it doesn't take rocket science to understand why there are people using my card at the pump, right? I mean, and you can manufacture cards, and it's cheaper to manufacture cards than to manufacture CDs, right? So, so one of the things we've tried to do is to not use, you know, really stupid ideas like that.
And I'm not saying you guys have a lot of fraud in your system. I'm just
No.
saying if it does happen, Is the merchant
Well, there will always
responsible?
be fraud, and so now the question is, if you have identity providers, will there be, I guess what you're asking, is there some kind of insurance similar to the type of insurance that you have with credit cards? Like, you know, a lot of your credit card fee is going for insurance, right, in order to handle fraud because it's based on such a stupid system. And so, like, that's one of the things that, you know, people could be using things like
Say eBay
card
buys into
space.
your system. Say eBay buys into the system and has everybody on this single sign-in data store somewhere else, and then they get busted in and people are stealing other people's.
Well, they're
gifts
not going
and-
to get busted in if they support Kim's system.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's for sure. NSA vetted.
Well, they're
Okay.
going to be.
But some fraudulent thing occurs, and all
It
of
happens
a sudden,
anyway. It happens anyway.
whose blame is it? Is it eBay's blame for using the system, or is it the system's blame? Because the consumer is going to blame eBay.
Well,
for
but I
that.
mean, it depends, right? There's a million
Yeah.
ways. I mean, were they hacked, or was it because of the protocol? Well, you know, we could bake this a million different ways.
And
the
how do you
the
log
fact
that?
Of the matter
Are they
is-
calling the API
the fact
right
of
or
the matter
not?
is,
Dude,
the market has yet to bear a
Look,
solution. out.
the thing is that when business involves taking risks, you take risks in order to make money. And so people look at the risks and they decide, am I well enough protected to do that? And that's basically, all we do is provide plumbing, and people make the risks on the other side. So for example, when it comes to some kind of an identity provider, you might go, well, gee, the authentication used by that identity provider is really easy to break into, right? And so if you're running a service where you're selling, you know, $1 million outfits, you'd probably not want to trust that. If you're selling a service where you're just trying to get as many people as possible in the door, develop a relationship with them, you would trust that. So what I'm saying is that there's just a certain amount of risk associated with the different types of things. As a vendor or as a user of the system, it's always your responsibility to go, well, how much risk am I taking with the various parties that I'm interacting with? And so there's no set answer to that. Different outfits using the same technology will have different risk factors, and their business models will involve having different ways of ensuring the users.
Okay.
I have two tangential stories. One was back in the day, there was this guy who sued Microsoft because he put a wrong formula in a spreadsheet, right? That was one of my favorite stories. Second is, when I go up to the BART and I flip my credit card in to pay for the BART, by the time I take the card back and put it in my wallet, I got my thing. How come other credit card authentication can't be that fast, Kim?
Well, they're probably not actually doing an authentication.
They're not doing an authentication, Mark.
So
See,
there you go.
they're
So
a good example.
There's
right?
a perfect. See, at the BART for $20, for $5, they don't care. They'll take the loss, right? I know those people are scamming them.
And it'll take them a lot of time before.
And they have you on video.
It takes a lot of time before the loss equals all the computer systems they would need in order to do the authentication.
Right. Yes, it's all relative balancing of costs.
Well, I just brought it up because it's a security session. I think that's my only point is it's just like credit cards. If you go to an OpenID system, I think the consumer can have no liability for fraud because there's no way to point a finger at who was the fraudulent actor.
Well,
I think you should start a company
Well,
and just make
But
money
I
from
think
know,
that.
if you're using-
we're seeing a lot of companies emerging that are doing second factor authentication with OpenID. There and also interesting ways of doing authentication. There's voice authentication. There's like an extra keyboard,
Eyeball.
secure key. There's
Yeah, all of those things are subject to man-in-the-middle attacks. So from a security point of view,
and there's a company working on addressing the
know.
man-in-the-middle attack stuff too.
Just so you know,
They're
we
coming
can
to-
talk about
CardSpace,
security.
CardSpace addresses that because the site that you're visiting is controlled by the card, not by the relying party. But all I'm saying is that there are different. So that's why one of the first things that we talked about when we got together with the OpenID folks was, can we have some kind of a profile in OpenID where you specify what your security requirements are? And we've been working on that together.
Next
so
question.
that the relying party can actually say, I need this.
So first of all, I'm from Facebook and I work on the API, so I'd love to give you a little response if you don't mind.
Please do.
I think you misunderstood the intent of the restrictions we have. It's not so much that you can't take the information and use it, it's that you can't, our goal is to protect the user's privacy. So the users on Facebook have a whole set of of who can see what information about them. So it's important that any information you try to see about a Facebook user is subject to those privacy constraints. Does that make sense?
But can the user say, well, I want to give this out?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's good then.
Is that okay?
That's
Yeah.
not clear in the TOS.
All right.
And if I was a lawyer, I would tell you to change the
Can
TOS.
he contact you and
Sure.
But
okay, that's
again,
great.
seriously,
We love that problem.
contracts
solving
are
on the
meant to
spot.
be clear to communicate your intent. And if it's your intent to let the user communicate, that needs to be a new paragraph in your
And
TOS.
so now are you going to get down on your knees and apologize?
Un mio tesoro, un vistere e giorno, et mistoranno, dopo tutte no.
Is this Rigoletto?
I completely made it up. Unless you speak Italian.
Okay, so I have two questions. The first question is going back to what you were talking about before. You mentioned that OpenID kind of solves the problem of a user not wanting to fill out another form and create another account. I would posit that a good percentage of that resistance isn't so much the problem of creating an account, but it's the problem of giving out information, such as giving out my email address so that I'm going to start getting spam from your company. So, I mean, it doesn't really seem like OpenID is solving that issue.
Well, you don't have to give your email
Wait,
account away to
Excuse
log
me,
in.
I got it.
You
Choose
got
precedent
it.
here. That's what the attribute exchange is for. That's exactly what the attribute exchange is
No,
for.
but he's making a different point. He's saying people just don't want to give out the information.
Well,
Yeah,
then they will turn it off. They will not choose to open it up. And I believe in your Rivers of People news feed, they can now control whether they are included in the feed or not, right? They can turn it off to opt out so they are not being tracked by others, right?
But in
You know,
most of these scenarios, you actually want that information. For example, if I run a site, I want someone's email address so I can contact
who's I?
me as a
Joe
John,
Schmo
John Doe
long-tail
making a
site,
website
right.
who wants to,
Why do you want, okay, let me ask you a question. Why do you want their email address?
so that I can get them to come back.
But what, you're going to spam them then?
No, I mean, so I can send them notifications if something happens.
I'm a
Well,
little confused. I'm confused.
So
Okay,
you're
you got
asking,
Facebook.
you're asking to be able to
I'm not in Facebook mode. I'm just,
Okay, so you got two sites, right? If you come to a site, you choose to join that site, you choose to give them their email. If you don't want to give them their email, don't join the site.
right.
right. But so I guess my point is, by the same token, I wouldn't create an account on that site today. I also wouldn't sign in using OpenID tomorrow.
When-
There you go.
Fine, and you have that.
Then don't join the site.
No, but okay,
But
so I'll just
I
push
would.
back. When I was, because, you know, I actually was the person who said that it would help. So there are lots of sites where I actually don't mind giving them my information as long as they don't, you know.
Sell it.
Yeah, and so on. So I would like to know what their security, what their privacy policy is. But I don't mind giving them sort of basic information. I have all these mail accounts that can be turned off at the flick of a switch. But I just don't want to go through the rigmarole. Like, you know, I'm busy. I'm trying to blog, for example. I have to go through all of these sites and create an account. And I just say, to hell with this. I don't want to do this. And I think a lot of people do that. So it's not really. I do have fairly good insulation with some of my email accounts. And I have an email account for when I first go somewhere. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to use this, and then if they treat me properly, I'll upgrade them to a better email account later on and stuff like that.
Well,
And then I have one that I can just switch off periodically. Hotmail is good for that.
There's
you know.
a big difference between a site that's default today asking you to log in with an email before it'll even give you an account, and a site that might switch to OpenID where all I'm giving them is an identifier. Maybe they can go find my URL, but I'm not giving them my email. So I think it improves things. Let's go to the next question.
Sorry, last question is, there's another problem that we faced, and I'm curious if you guys have a solution for it. So right now there's already, 20 million accounts on Facebook and 20 million accounts in Netflix and all of these different sites, and AOL Instant Messenger has tons of accounts, and yes, those are all open IDs on AOL, but now all of these things are separate identities, and how do you, where things get really interesting is where you can start combining those identities and putting that information together. But how do you do that if there's already this base of users who have...
That's what we call in our business a business opportunity. Okay? So just off the top of my head, there's Spokio. There's something recently called Spock. I don't know if it always has to start with an S and a P, but there's other people who play in this game. I call that master profile. That will be a feature in our product by the summer.
That requires that people be proactive about this, right?
That people be what?
That requires that the user actually bothers to go and sign up for this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that 95% of the users won't do this.
But this is
but you just talked about. Okay, first of all, the foundation is that the user's in control. So now what I think you're incurring, and that's what Spock is that somebody's going to go off and scrape everything, and then the user will, at their convenience, go and claim these aggregated profiles, okay? I totally disagree with that, and the fact that Tim O'Reilly has said that that's a good thing should teach you something about Tim O'Reilly, okay? Now, what I'm about is that it's all about the end user's control. If end user chooses to come to my product and use a feature we'll call master profile that will go sync up all these different accounts into an aggregated people aggregator account, then that is their choice. It's under their control.
Yeah.
All right?
It really
That's the foundation here. And any paranoia and statements you make about somebody else doing that shit, those people need to be shot out in the parking lot. Am I prejudiced enough? I mean, this is the enemy.
But there is another aspect to this, which is once you have the architectural glue there, then people can actually think about business relationships that right now are very hard to think about. So, you know, you might find that, okay, it's suddenly, if suddenly it were convenient to a certain business relationship to open up identity between two of these forces, like you're talking about, and you could do it like that, before everybody changes their minds, you know, you're likely to see things happening, I think. So it's...
We totally didn't answer your question.
And Claim ID does this.
Well, no, I mean...
Well, I think Magnolia has a way where if you have an existing Magnolia account and you want to add an OpenID, you can. So, like, the user experience of kind of, you know,
but now I have to, for every account that I have, go to every single site and sign in N number of times for how many OpenIDs I have.
Dude,
I know, but then once I've done that, I mean...
It's going to happen. It'll be baked into the OS, believe me. It's definitely going to happen. Final question.
Yeah, I think the question is somewhat around the psychology of the user. Like, how do you get users to care in a proactive manner, to take control of their identity? It's something to me about sharks and toasters. I think people are afraid of sharks, but toasters kill more people. So people are not afraid of toasters. They use them on a regular basis.
Okay.
Just like we use our proprietary IDs or whatever.
Okay. I'm there with you.
When with this globalization happening, our IDs start to being outsourced and people send our stuff to their subcontractors wherever they are in the world, and I never authorized that.
So wait a minute. So how about this? Why would somebody ever use a different web browser, right? No offense, I mean, I'm at a Microsoft conference here, but IE1, it was game over, right? 99% of the market. Why on earth would anyone ever use another web browser, right? How do you get users to care about that? And I think this is one of those, you know, and I'm going to say another, you know, crappy buzzword, but it's one of those grassroots, bottoms-up thing. You can't go out and try and push on users. You have to find some users that can actually bring people along with them. Same thing's happening with identity.
If you start to get some momentum and there starts to be sort of a part of the internet that connects up and a part of the internet that doesn't connect up, I think we'll be back in a place similar to, you know, when everybody used to have to dial in and it was all dial up versus the sort of, hey, we're on the internet and it all connects up thing. So, you know, in other words, yeah, there is a problem creating the initial momentum. That's why some of the big players are important. If you can get that initial momentum going, then you end up with one part of the internet which is much more attractive than the other. And I think at that point,
okay, I want to give a final metaphor here. In the U.S., a penny is now worth like 1.2 cents, a nickel is worth almost 6 cents. Okay? It is illegal to take pennies and nickels and smelt them because you can make more money by selling the metal than the value of our dollar. Okay? I apologize for being American. Most Americans are very stupid, and they don't even realize how fucked our country is. Okay? The value of our dollar is so low, okay? You have to get outside the U.S. to understand that, okay? But that's the toaster shark thing. Most Americans are happy staying in the U.S. with their shitty dollar. That's the reality. So yes, though those people will stay stuck with what the hell they got, that doesn't make it good or right. That's where we are today.
Mark just got back
there's a
from
high-
Brussels, so he's smarting.
Yeah. Let me just tell you, I apologize for being American.
I
And thank you very much for the panel. We got to go.
We gotta go.
Totally late. It's like the clock's wrong.
The clock's wrong?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.